Broadcasting live from the world's most famous beach and the world's most famous fringe station. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're live on Fringe FM, KTLK, digital broadcasting. It's October the 5th, Thursday night, 2023 here, and Sasha Graham's going to be our guest. We're going to be talking about the tarot coming up shortly. If this is your first time listening to the broadcast, we've been going strong for over 6 years now. And this is a show about lighting the void. The void, the spiritual void, the void of life, the void that's inside you, the void in your heart, the void of everything. What is the void? The unknown. Now, there's two ways that you can look at this whole thing, right? 6 years strong. We're definitely not there yet. We're not there yet. We don't have thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners and thousands of fans, and we're not making millions of dollars here at this podcast. But, you know, tonight's episode I want to dedicate to all of the people that have dedicated themselves to self-study. What is the void? The void is exactly what it sounds like, man. And the tarot has helped me through the void in my life so much. Each element. Now, we have a course on the tarot at the Deep Void. If you go to fringe.fm/Deep Void, there's courses on the tarot. But I needed to learn about the tarot from a structured point of view. I needed to understand the whole system. But let me start with this quote here. Well, actually, before I do that, let me just ask for your support, because we have to have your support to keep doing these things. Like, so if you can support the show, if you can support the Fringe FM, please do so. Just go to fringe.fm/donations and send in your support. You can go to the Deep Void and order anything. I do audio voice guided stuff there. You can also join the Deep Void for just $5, and you'll get a link to this podcast. It goes back almost to like 2015 with no ads. Tons of great interviews plus extra content too. So there's a quote by Carl Jung that he points out that we're trying to escape ourselves. This thing, and to be enlightened, in my opinion, is always, and this has always been my opinion, to be enlightened is to shed your light into the void, but not to let the void define you. But first, you have to be okay with yourself. Otherwise, your light will dim, right? The tarot is not an easy concept because there's things to understand on multiple levels. There's the story of the arcana, which also correspond to the 22 paths on the Tree of Life and the Arcana cards. There's the energies that they speak of. There's the court cards, and the court cards have their own story, which correspond to a certain aspect of the elements in the human soul. And then there's the minor cards. The minor cards, Kabbalistically, represent 1 through 10 on the Tree of Life. So as you can see, all of magic, all of the esoteric wisdom, everything. And when I do these shows, I forget names, but it was I don't think it was Agrippa. I think it was Levi that said that the whole of the mysteries lies in the tarot. And I say that in this interview at some point, because we were going to do this interview live and I couldn't get into the system for some reason. So we started to record it, and then halfway through the show, we were able to go live. It seems like something did not want this show to happen. But you know me, I'm stubborn. You could throw all kinds of kinks at me, and I'm still going to make it happen. Dully and persistently, or immediately, right? So, and I want to thank John Marshall for getting our guest on. So, it's a lofty goal, right? But it's a serious goal to come into yourself this way. And I don't see the tarot as a divinatory tool alone. I think that's more kind of a mundane aspect and a fun aspect to it, but it's also a pretty serious one for a lot of people. But I use the tarot more for transcendental things. I would say that the tarot for me has been a tool of self-exploration and not an end in itself. It's not like, okay, this thing's going to reveal the story to me so I'll understand happiness. It's more of a tool of self-exploration that never kind of ends. But we're always trying to escape that, because when we do self-exploration and we try to grow as a person, we outgrow things, we outgrow people. It becomes a lonely path sometimes. And this is why I think Carl Jung is right when he says people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. They'll practice Indian yoga in all its exercises, observe a strict regimen of diet, learn theosophy by heart, or mechanically repeat mystic texts from literature of the whole world, all because they cannot get on with themselves and have not the slightest faith that anything useful could ever come out of their own souls. Think about that. That's something I know for sure that the tarot will show you all the time. That you have just as much love and power and creativity, and you have everything you need inside of you. Inside you, you have everything you need. But it's scary because we don't, at least for me, like, I don't want to do this alone. And yet I feel alone. And I think a lot of us do, no matter who's around us or whatever. Sometimes there's a part of us that until we grow through a certain thing, we're going to feel isolated. Here's the funny thing about the tarot, that one of the most mystical and magical things that it's shown me, that it's shown me that the world that we live in is 100% a mirror of what's inside of us. Like, I don't know for a fact that the world and this is going to sound really woo, but I don't know for a fact that the world that you live in is the same world that I live in. When I feel certain things, the ebbs and flows of emotion in my life and how they feel in my body, I have no clue. You feel the same thing. I don't even know, we had this discussion one time a long time ago. I don't even know if you see the same colors I do. Which is another reason why we need symbols in our life. Things that we can all agree on. So these cards of art, these tarot, has been a very life-altering thing for me in my life. It's hard to imagine that a deck of cards could do such a big thing, but it does. And it can. It will show you your deepest truths, your biggest fears, your greatest desires, and how all of those things can hurt you, hinder you, or help you, lead you down the right path, or lead you astray. And it doesn't make sense doing self-exploration. As I shuffle these cards, when I'm looking at these cards, it doesn't make a lick of sense to me. Not one bit of sense. How these things can just come out randomly, and yet I'm being given these messages. But I'm beginning to learn these messages work in tandem. I could lay down a deck of, or a set of 3 cards, and you will see one thing and I may see another. And that's the beauty, that's the real message of the tarot. Like, the symbols are so powerful. There's no way you're not going to get the right cards for yourself. And reading for others is a whole other thing. But for someone to say that they fully understand the tarot, A to Z, they've got it all figured out. I've never heard one person say that about the tarot. There's lots of cool stuff that I learn all the time. Like, once I learned, what the rider Waite symbols were created from, what correspondences they were created from, and egregoric energies, that was cool. But there's still an intuitive aspect to the tarot that you can't exactly line up with everybody else. Even Aleister Crowley himself, when he made the Thoth deck, admitted that he didn't understand everything about the tarot. Some big points, definitely, he did. He quotes this: "The true significance of the Addis of Tahuti, or tarot trumps, also awaits full understanding. I have satisfied myself that these 22 cards compose a complete system of hieroglyphs representing the total energies of the universe. In the case of some cards, presumably referring to his own deck, I would think, the one he made, I have succeeded in restoring the original form and giving a complete account of their meaning. Others, however, I understand imperfectly, and of some few I have at present obtained no more than a general idea. So as dark and sick as this man was, we all know how good of a magician he was, how smart he was. And yet he still didn't fully, there was still stuff left to be understood. Yeah, so right there and then I knew that the void isn't going to go away. There's always going to be an aspect of something that you don't understand. Which I guess there's two ways to look at that. And everything I'm talking to you about right now is something that the tarot showed me. But there's two ways to look at that. You can look at that as something to be afraid of, which I have before, and many times. Or you can look at it as an adventure with an open childlike curiosity of self-discovery. I do know that one thing that tarot is ideal for me in my life, what it has been ideal for, is a kind of pathworking or visualization known as pathworking. It helps you, I guess it's called like rising on the planes. So it helps you focus on certain energies the card represents, right? And what I've learned throughout all of this is that the tarot has been an amazing tool for me, just for me, when I'm alone trying to figure something out. That there are no books or anything, any movies or anything that'll help me understand something. It's helped me understand a lot of things. But one thing it doesn't offer you, for sure, which I'm kind of glad that the tarot never offered me, this is a shortcut. I've always studied the tarot Kabbalistically. And there's some meditative exercises that go along with that. And sometimes things take a while. I'd like to tell you that rooting out trauma and certain things in your life are done easily. And we think they're done easily by ignoring them or covering them up with humor or using drugs or sex or whatever. Whatever we do, overeating, you name it, I've done them all. I've done them all. But if you really start to do the work, the tarot will show you that too. And sometimes it's monotonous, sometimes it's boring, it's definitely not sexy, by no means. But eventually results do come. And then once those results start happening, once you use this system this way, at least for me, you start to perceive the whole thing very differently. I mean, these aren't just cards. They work in a fluid manner too. Certain things have several interpretations, certain keys or cards and paths, and it seems all complex on the surface, but when you hear people say, you need to do the work, man, you need to do the work, you never hear people talk to you about, well, what is that work? How do we come to deal with ourselves? Because I can assure you, if you don't deal with yourself, if you don't do the work, your soul wants one thing, but your mind is telling you something else. And if you don't get the two to align, it's going to cause suffering. It just is. And life will mirror that and put you in a place until you work it out. The tarot has always shown me what's happening or what's going on, but the practical work, even now I'm having a hard time explaining it. The practical work has been painstaking sometimes. There's certain cards I don't want to see, but I see them come up. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have I have a special connection with the tarot, and I think a lot of people do. That's why a lot of people are into it. And our guest coming up has been working with the tarot for a long time, so I'm sure that she does too, just like we all do, that have been practicing or using the tarot. But it's much deeper than, I think it's much deeper than what we think it really is. Now, I can't tell you about the Marseille. The history of the tarot is kind of, that could be a whole show in itself. But from the Rider-Waite deck, from the Golden Dawn on, it became, somehow or another, it became a guidebook to helping us see these energies and helping us see and meditate upon the practical work of self-transformation. Now, the Golden Dawn got really, patriarchal and religious about it, you could say. They even had a prayer or an angel that they would pray to before they would do readings. It was the angel Heru, which I believe this is another version of Horus. But in the brick of the Golden Dawn, it says, Heru, the great angel, is set over the operations of the secret wisdom, what thou seest in a book, and send it into the 7 abodes that are in Asaya. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat upon the throne a book sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the books and to loose the seals thereof? They prefaced what they called Book T with this passage. This was their attitude towards the tarot deck, that it revealed these secrets, the revelations. The lines in the Bible are from the Apocalypse of St. John in chapter 5. But they describe it differently than the way I was brought up. They describe it as the saint having risen into the celestial realm, is shown a scroll, and is told that no one on earth is worthy to open it, but the Lamb of God, having sacrificed his blood for mankind, is deemed worthy. So that suggests that the tarot is the book spoken of in the Apocalypse and is the key to the universe. Is it really? Of course, I wouldn't say the tarot deck is that book per se, and neither would Robert Wang. He writes about this, but it does constitute what's called Book T. The implication states that the key to the cosmos is our perception of the underlying pattern of which the tarot deck is an external symbol. But the book, or set of universal patterns, is open to no one of this earth. It can be opened only by the Lamb of God, who is Christ, Buddha, Osiris in this context, and only those who have been initiated into the Christ center of the Kabbalah, or Tiferet, and can fully understand the tarot. This is what's called the adeptship, the whole system of magic from the Rider-Waite on. The original system is inside that tarot deck. The 4 elements, the 4 worlds, the 5 different parts of the soul, everything that you go through, it's all in that deck. It becomes a beautiful thing. And the reason why I think I know this to be is I used to get kind of snooty about it because I thought, well, I understand the deeper meanings of this stuff. So who are these people that are just intuitively reading tarot? Or they read a couple of books on the astrological influences, so they think they understand the tarot. And yet, when you really pay attention to it, if the tarot is deceiving you, you're deceiving yourself. If it's giving you the right answers, you're giving the right answers to yourself. It's kind of a weird tool that shows you all these things. And if we're going to be in contact with a higher consciousness and our higher selves, meditation is one thing, but it's awesome to have tools, not only to be able to speak to our higher self, but to open the doors of intuition, and so that we can learn to develop our psyches in our psychic awareness. And I believe in my heart that the tarot does just that. So anyways, that's a long rant about how passionate kind of I am about this whole subject matter. We've done a ton of shows on the tarot before. I think we've only had a couple of people on that actually created tarot decks or talked about them. But now everybody's into it, and I think that's a good thing. So our guest coming up after the break is Sasha Graham, and we're going to speak to her about the tarot decks and the books that she created about them, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Sasha Graham is a world-renowned tarot expert, best-selling author, award-winning tarot deck creator, actor, and educator who teaches and lectures around the globe. Her work has been translated into more than 10 languages, and she's the author of 12 books, including Tarot Diva, the 365 Tarot Spreads, 365 Tarot Spells, Llewellyn's Complete Book of Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, and Magic of the Tarot. Also, she served as an editor and writer of Scarebeo's Tarot Fundamentals, Tarot Experience, and Tarot Compendium, Dark Side of the Tarot, and Tarot Original 1909 series. And on top of that, she's contributed to Llewellyn's Magical Almanac of 2020, 2022, 2024, the Witch's Date Book of 2022, 2024, and the list goes on. And I'm really excited to have you here. I've talked about the tarot quite a bit on this program, but I don't think I've only had one other tarot creator, which was Llewellyn Duquette, on this program. So it's really cool to have you on here. It seems like your whole life has been invested into this thing. So thank you for spending time with us here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And wow, Juan was on before me. Those are big kind of footsteps to follow. So I'm honored to be here. He's amazing.
Yeah, like most of our stuff that we've talked about on the program has mainly been from like out of body experience and stuff, or like either the out of body experience or the occult. Now, I read tarot a little bit, but it's mainly from like a traditional ceremonial point of view. But there's such a vast world that exists in the tarot. So, I mean, I can say from just looking at the creations of what you've done here, you understand this, right? Like the whole initiatic path, and this is what I've read in books, like the entire mysteries of the mysteries is inside that tarot deck. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. Tarot and you know, it's the innate structure of tarot, right? The 78 cards, the four suits, the major and the minors. I mean, you literally can take any esoteric system and lay it on top of the tarot, and it fits. And that's why I always call tarot like the gateway drug to the metaphysical, because you can drape anything and everything on top of it, and it works with almost perfect symmetry. And I mean, as far as the initiatory process of the tarot, I mean, I think that's my tradition is right, and that's definitely where all of that sprang from. That was what the Golden Dawn was doing, you know, back in 1910.
Right.
And I think about working with tarot is one thing I know, a lot of people, you know, they don't start off with a spiritual idea or spiritual practice in mind. You know, people are pulling cards. They want to know about their love life. They want to read for their friends, you know, see what's coming down the pike. And then one day it inadvertently becomes a spiritual system. You know, it kind of sneaks up on you. So it's almost an initiation that happens whether you realize it or not, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it'll definitely do that for you. But when you read for people, I think it's cool. Like some people want to know, you know, they want to know their future, right? They want the answers. They want all of that stuff. But it seems to me, at least when I read it, it's just like, it just mirrors. It's hard to get past the mirror. Like I get frustrated with it sometimes. I'll be like, can you just give me the advice I need, you know, to tell me what I need to do? And it kind of just keeps mirroring what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Like,
it totally makes sense. And I think that when you realize it's mirroring you back to you, and it's odd, you know, tarot, it's always different. I find that it's always different when you sit down to work with it. And when it's mirroring things back to you, it's an interesting thing because past, present, and future doesn't really exist, right? We're only just ever in our present at any given time. I don't even love the idea of predictive reading, but like to your point, advice, right? Give me something I can kind of hang my hat on. What can I like look forward to, or what will help me get to this thing that I want? But when it is just mirroring things back to you, it's because you kind of have to stay with it. You know, I think there's this expectation among people who read cards that they're always going to be getting answers. And it's not a dog and pony show like that. You know what I mean? Tarot is truly a reflection of ourselves, our humanity, and it reflects all the facets and complexities inside of us. So it makes me happy to hear that for you when you're reading cards, that it mirrors it back to you.
What was the first deck that you ever got? The very first deck you ever picked up, and when was that?
So the very first deck was the Rider-Waite Tarot. And I was in middle school, so I was about 11 or 12 years old. And my birthday is on Halloween, so I've always assumed that I was born a witch, a ghoul, and magical stuff. That was just sort of my birthright. And my school was doing a fundraiser, a carnival, and we were all supposed to participate. And so I thought, I will get a pack of tarot cards and I'll sell fortunes. I'll be a gypsy fortune teller. So I was so excited. I went to get the deck at the mall, brought it home, and opened it up. And I had no idea what I was looking at. I was completely flummoxed. And then it just so happened that my stepsister's best friend was in the house. She was a born-again Christian. She saw the tarot. Freaked out. We were living on a farm. She freaked out. She brings it out to like a tin garbage can outside with lighter fluid, lights them on fire.
Oh my gosh! Really?
Yes. So not only was I like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought I could read tarot and I didn't know what I was looking at. But then I was like, these cards must be the most powerful thing ever. So I was immediately like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I really started reading in earnest in my 20s. And the deck that I really learned to read on was the Halloween Tarot by Kipling, Rupert Kipling, or Kipling West. Great deck. What was your first deck?
Mine was the Rider-Waite, for sure. I read Liam Thomas Christopher's book, Kabbalah, The Great Work in Self-Transformation, and that was the book that was the deck that he wanted you to get, right? So he wanted you to I guess, meditate on one card a day. That was the starting thing. And then as you went through each element in the grade, you'd learn the minor arcana, then the major arcana, and then you'd get into geomancy, but everything came back to the tarot because it all corresponded to the story of the tarot. And even now, I mean, I'm still learning lots from the tarot. Like, you hear a lot of stuff people talk about the astrological and planetary energies, and those are hard to memorize. But then you kind of understand, there's a Kabbalistic story behind all this too. And then it gets really, really deep, right? And
so deep.
Yeah.
So interesting. And that, and that's why all the tarot decks that I make are Rider-Waite clones in a sense. I will almost always retain the graphic structure, even if kind of whether it's my Dark Wood Tarot or a Haunted House Tarot, I still retain the graphic structure because of exactly what you just said. There's so much information, so much Kabbalistic and initiatory information. And so people are when they're reading the cards, they're learning and taking it. The information is entering, because it's all visual, right? Your unconscious is picking that up, and it's really, really important. And I find it very disconcerting to read, and I feel like it's a bit of a bummer to read with decks that are just like, here's a pretty illustration of the Four of Wands. I think exactly what you said, that the point of the Kabbalistic underpinnings and the way that Pamela Coleman Smith so distinctly was able to grasp that and put them into the deck. I find that essential. And then that becomes the common language. So past just the numerical structure, that becomes the visual language, which is really the glue of the deck as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. So when I read for myself, because I try to read for people, and I feel like I'm not doing this right, honestly. I mean, you're way more advanced than I am, but when I do it, I think, okay, here's what I'm seeing. And I feel like, do you ever get this thing where it's always like bad news? I feel like I'm giving people bad news. There's got to be a positive way to spin this. And that's what I'm trying to learn how to do, you know?
So one of the things that I teach people, because now I do so much more teaching actually than I do reading for people, is it's a great idea when you are beginning to read some cards for someone else and even for yourself, to kind of set yourself up with a mantra or an intention, right? And for me, that's always been, let the words that are coming out of my mouth be the words that this person needs to hear. And it's also, I think, really important when we're reading cards to separate ourselves from the information that's coming through us, right? Because I think that reading tarot, I've always found that reading tarot is like writing a book, painting a painting. When you're reading for someone else, there's this third thing, and then you just become that vessel of information. And so you want to be as true to the information that's coming through you. You want to be very mindful of how you're speaking to the other person, because the power of suggestion is so strong, and people are in such a vulnerable state when they willingly come to you to have their cards read. You know, often they're coming in times of stress or heightened anxiety, or you know, the stakes are really high. So I have always found that it feels like safeguarding to me when I do a bit of a meditation or a mantra or an intention. But sometimes, I mean, tell me if you, I feel like oftentimes you'll know the information that's coming through just based on sitting with the person, and the cards kind of just confirm it, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, that's totally true. I think that what I'm trying to learn is, because I don't know if it's because I'm a man or I just want things to be like so symbolic for me. When I pull a card, I start trying to, okay, well, what's the astrological symbols? What's the Kabbalistic symbols here? Like, what world of the tree is this in? All, you know, what part of the soul is this, and that kind of stuff. And then I start feeling like I'm missing that intuitive thing. I think that's something that the tarot probably helps people with, is to grow that intuition, right? Because we want to develop our psychic awareness, and I don't think there's a better tool to do that with than the tarot, you know.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, and it starts with you, right, in your own tarot practice. And a tarot practice can be as simple as just pulling a card every morning for maybe you spend 4 or 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't even take a long time. But it's such a game changer, because when you develop trust in the intuition and the information that's coming through the cards with you, then that trust leads into the rest of your life. You start to understand, right? When you start to pull a card a day, ask one question a day, a card a day, and work with that card on a daily basis, you'll suddenly start to know what psychic hits feel like. Because you'll maybe get a psychic hit from, the Knight of Cards, that reminds me of XYZ. And then later on in the afternoon, out of the blue, that XYZ person reaches out to you, and you're like, oh, okay, I can confirm. Like, I know that that's what my body feels like when I'm getting like a psychic hit. And when we're talking about psychic and intuition, you know, all of us are different. So what feels psychic to me may feel entirely different to you, and that's why we're all really the Indiana Jones of our own experiences, right, in this world. And so tarot teaches us, in a sense, to learn what's going on inside of us, so that we really can know if the information that's coming through, it can be trusted, right? And so I think there's a big difference between psychic information and intuitive information. And then even within that, so psychic information is information that comes from the outside, right? Kind of enters your body. And it's kind of wild, right? It can never necessarily be commanded or depend, like it shows up when it shows up. And then the intuitive facilities are that like deep inner knowing within you, that river of kind of authenticity. But the interesting thing about the intuition is that often can be, because that's a feeling that's coming from inside of you, that can often be mistaken for associative memory, right? Which is just the way that our brains make shortcuts. So there's all these interesting subtleties that you'll learn with a daily tarot practice just by testing it out, for yourself. And then I think as far as what you were saying, Joe, about, you know, the astrological associations and all of these wonderful things that we can learn and memorize, that I always call, you know, stuff we put in our tarot toolbox. I think if you go always with your first instinct of what's coming through and allow yourself to tell the story of the card, then the Kabbalistic information, the astrological information, the numerology, the colors, whatever stuff you have studied and explored, that will then come to your aid and provide you with even more of a depth of interpretation or of the story that you're telling to either yourself or to the person. But I feel like that should all be a support system. And the most important thing is what you're seeing and feeling in that moment with the card, with that question. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. It does. It makes total sense. So when you do a reading do you do readings for yourself? I should ask you this first.
All the time.
Like, how often do you think you do that? Just curious.
So I pull a card for myself every day. And again, like I was saying before, it takes not even 5 minutes, but it's an incredibly powerful thing to do first thing in the morning because I clear my mind, right? So just clearing your mind in the morning, just as you're like getting set up for your day, like really just getting into a centered space, kind of wiping the slate clean and saying, all right, usually my question is, what do I need to know, about moving into my day, or what can I pay attention to focus, like to like have kind of like the best day possible, right? Or to get the things that I need done. The way that you phrase the questions that you ask the cards, good questions, like if you sit down and if there's something you want to know and you start asking that every single day and with due diligence of your cards, you will get an answer. There's no question out there that you have that you won't get clarity on. If you sit down in a clear state and ask that question every day, like your life depends on it. And it really changes the course of your afternoon because you brought peace into your mind. You've cultivated a piece of mindfulness to start out your day. And when you're looking at the cards, you're in a space of observation, right? So I always say, like, tarot takes all the crazy thoughts that are running around in our heads, and we can put the cards on the table, and suddenly what's in our heads is spread before us. And with that, like, 1.5 foot of space, it's where we get a bird's eye view. And a different perspective. And it's so subtle, but it's so powerful. It's like those 1 degree turns that make all of the difference. And all of a sudden, you're getting all the answers that you want.
That's so cool. I think that's so cool, but I also wonder why, like to me, like you go, I don't know if you read on YouTube, you know how you see all these people that just read on YouTube for like, I hate to even ask you this, but I'm definitely curious about it. So I have to. There's a lot of people that read for like astrological energies. It's a big thing on YouTube, right? Well, here's the energy for Aquarius, or here's the energy for this. And I feel like, oh man, because I don't know, I guess, how do I phrase this question? Do you think people can be led astray with tarot, or perhaps maybe they could be misreading the tarot?
Oh, I think people can be led astray with anything in anything. You know what I mean? Like when people talk about like shady tarot card readers, and I'm like, yeah, and they're shady lawyers, and they're shady priests, and they're shady like everything and you know what I mean? That like, do I think that people are making things up or being shady? Yeah, some people are being shady, but I think the more important thing is when a person is looking for information, it almost the vehicle doesn't, like the universe, the world, whatever you want to call it, is always sending us messages, right? It's sending us signs, it's sending us signals. And that's why it's like, you know, if you've ever been in a mediumship circle, or if you're in a place where other people are getting readings, and it's like in an audience, I always like listen to every reading as if it's a message meant for you. Because at the end of the day, if you're able to get some clarity, and not predictive, I'm not talking about predictive, right? I'm not talking about tomorrow you're going to walk down to the corner store and meet the love of your life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about information that is helpful for you in whatever your case scenario is. I don't think that it matters, the medium. I don't think that it matters if the information is helpful to you. And so at a certain point, like I think that the people need to be very careful when they go get psychic intuitive readings, because the power of suggestion is strong, and you want to know, you want to know where the information is coming from. You want to know kind of the intention of the person who's reading the cards, and you wind up getting most of what you get from tarot and psychic and intuitive readings are the personality of that reader. So you want to know that you are in safe hands. You want to put down your boundaries. You want to know what kind of information they're delivering. Do you know what I mean? Because if any of us are in a state of desperation, and that's another thing that happens, that, people will go from reader to reader to reader to either justify what they're doing in their life or to hear the information that they want, or they just need an excuse to like ruminate over someone they're obsessed with, Right. So I think that there's responsibility on both parties, and people should advocate for themselves when they're going in to get readings for things that are really important for them. They should know they're in safe hands.
It is a lot of relationship stuff though, isn't it? Like it seems like.
Oh, always. It's, and it's a funny thing. I started out, before I was writing books and publishing, I just had started out as a tarot reader in New York City. So I had private clients during the day, and I did like parties and events, in the evenings. And I quickly learned, being a tarot reader is like being an inadvertent sociologist. You really learn very quickly what's important to people. And something that I noticed, it didn't matter if I was reading for a famous celebrity, a wealthy CEO, or somebody who, was like, did room service in hotels, no matter where anybody was on the economic spectrum, everybody wants the same things: love, security, and peace. Love, security, and peace. And to be honest, that's in a way, the card, and that the tarot is created out of archetypes, archetypal energy. And so you could read a card. I could read any card. And if you're listening with open ears, you'll find information in that. You'll plug your information onto that and take that story like away. But I always find it, I think it's a beautiful, tarot has taught me about humanity. It's taught me how much people are so much more similar than we are different. And we really all want the same things. And yeah, love is number one. It's always love, love, love.
Do you think if people were more honest with themselves about that it would make things easier? I think it would be, because it seems like people do more to protect themselves from love than they do taking the risks. And the tarot will always kind of show you that. Well, it does show you the ego a lot. Like, this is what you're doing to block yourself a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of shadow work, and my Darkwood Tarot is a shadow deck because most and the funny thing when we're talking about like the intuition, what messes up our intuition, or what messes up us being in what I would call like your space of magic or your river of magic, and you know what I'm talking about. I think when I'm talking about a person, they look like they've swallowed the moon, right? They're inside, they're so alive inside themselves, and they're so authentic to whoever it is that they are, and that's the High Priestess card in tarot, right? And where we all mess up is we stand in the way of all of these things that are naturally inherent to us, with all of these beliefs and ideas, whether they're cultural ideas, religious ideas, self ideas. I'm not worthy, or I'm afraid, or I want it, or we get in our way so much, and that's why another reason I love the tarot. I want to call myself out for, on my BS. I want all the love that's out there. I want love, and I want money, and I want pleasure, and I want everyone to experience all of those things, right? So when we get out of our own way, we bring all of that, closer to us. And anybody who practices magic, has seen the results of this. And so, that's why when tarot is mirroring things to you, it's okay to just sit there and be with it, because it's not always going to be awesome. And, that's life.
Yeah,
and just because we do magic, doesn't mean that we're not human. And it doesn't mean that we don't have bad days and crummy things happen to us. But it teaches us, I think it teaches us how to deal, and how to inhabit space with things that are uncomfortable or unknown.
Well, so do you partake do you subscribe to like the holy guardian angel or the higher self, this idea that you have like a higher self that is trying to talk to you, which in magic they've called it the holy guardian angel? Do you subscribe to that, or do you think it's more of something different, like a consciousness?
A consciousness. So that's not necessarily the vernacular that I would use per se, but I think that higher self, Holy Spirit, I think they're all different words essentially addressing the same thing. I guess in the best way, and I'm not a particular student of any one thing other than my experience in this life. And so I do believe that we are all the unfolding eyes of the universe, right? The universal energy, divinity, the creative principle, right? Whatever that is that's making kind of everything happen all around us. I think that each of us is a unique view into, like, we're all like, billions of different eyes watching the universe watch itself. And so I really do believe that there is a consciousness, a high consciousness, and a very deep consciousness. Like, I believe, I guess, in a higher self, but I also really believe in the shadow self. And I'm not love and light. I think that construct is inherently flawed, because over 90% of the universe is darkness, and are things that are about to be formed. And the idea of light, well, I understand why people look to the light, and the light is what gives us, what nourishes us and makes life possible. I think to constantly look up to the angels or to the higher self as some perfect ideal thing, I think there's so much more in our darkness. And I think that it's in that mystery, in that stillness, that's where things come to be, and that's where things manifest. And so I think consciousness is expansive, and I think that we're always in a dialogue or in a dance with the inherent intelligence of the universe. But what I think is interesting, and what I've observed, and this is just only through my own experimentation, and I wouldn't ever force these beliefs on someone else, because we're all different. But I think that the expanding energy of the universe also, it doesn't necessarily know what's going to come next. And I think that really true magic erupts when you're willing to look divinity in the eye, like when you're willing to recognize it and it sees you, seeing it, because everything in the world wants to be seen, right? When you're walking through the garden and you smell like the cucumbers or the herbs growing, they're looking for your attention, right? Colors, lights, people, all like, why do people come to tarot readings? They want to be seen. They want to be encountered. So I think that when you greet divinity or the creative principle and let you know that you see it and it sees you seeing it, I think it answers with a magic that neither one of you could necessarily anticipate. And I think all of us know when we work hard or vision hard or do whatever it is that we do for something that we deeply desire, and that thing comes to pass and it comes true. That I think true magic is always when it happens in a way you never could have anticipated. And I think that it's a surprise on both ends.
Absolutely.
It's a surprise on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you that are listening on the radio station, thank you guys for your patience. We're just tuning into the Fringe FM. There will be the replay on the podcast, which everybody, when we get done with these shows, they're like, I want to re-listen. So this is going to be a good one if you download the podcast too, of course. But before we take the first break, because we're already like more than halfway through here, I wanted to.
Oh no.
Yeah, it goes by quick, right? So, like...
It does.
I wanted to wonder... This is kind of an off-the-wall question. So, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because when I started this radio show, Sasha, it wasn't to be anything other than a radio host. And then suddenly people wanted to... they wanted my help with out-of-body stuff or magic stuff or whatever. And I was like, it just felt like a lot of pressure to me. And I think it takes a certain type of person to handle that kind of energy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like the tarot does reveal to you a lot of stuff. Has there ever been times when, let's say you've read for somebody and you're like, you tell someone something, but you don't know if you want to tell them, people tend to cling to energies. You understand what I'm saying? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do you protect yourself from these? You understand what I mean by this soup of energy that people can, I don't think we do it to each other by accident a lot of times, right? So I'll give you an example because I'm going all over the place. If I was getting a reading from you and I was having a real problem in my life, say whether it's finding my purpose or a relationship or something, you give me an answer that I kind of want to hear. It's only human nature for me to naturally just keep kind of clinging. Well, Sasha, tell me more. Tell me this. Can you do another reading? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I am sensitive to that kind of stuff. So do you pick up on that at all? Do you pick up on people's energy when it comes to this? I work really, I try as best I can to set good boundaries. Sure. So that so that while I would say you could be of service to the people that you're reading to, at a certain point, it's okay to say no. But then the boundary also extends, right, energetically. And I think that's really, really important. You seem to be able to handle it. You seem to be able to handle it. Okay. I'm too sensitive for it, I think. I'm just saying. I think.
Yeah. So, and you also may be tuning into things like, when you're saying you're too sensitive. No, I think tell me more about when you were talking about the energies that come up.
Well, I can feel people's, pain in a sense. Like the suffering, so the reason as to why they're asking the question to begin with. And then, you know what I mean? And then, so the tarot will show someone, and when I read for them, and I want to get better at reading, because I want to learn. I want to read for people to actually help people. A lot of times when I read for people, they don't ever get another reading again because the information is so like hardcore, I guess you could say, or too honest or too real or too. I don't know. I don't want to use the word negative, right? But it's like all the way down to the unconscious stuff. And then I'm like, I don't know. And I'll tell people, like, I don't know what to tell you. The tarot is so awesome that it's showing me that you have this block here and this is exactly what you need to do. And this is what's keeping you from doing that. I had a person change their whole direction of their life one time because of a tarot reading that I did. And they were about to be in a relationship and do something that their heart really wasn't into. Let's just put it that way. But their life was going to be set up. And I didn't know this. And the tarot, it comes out, bam, there's the truth right there.
Yes.
And I told them, I said, exactly. And I said, look, this thing is telling me that you're doing this for these discs and stuff, but I'm seeing that you're going to be disappointed, that your heart is always going to ache. So you could do this for the safety and security that you want, but you're always going to have this nagging heartache. It's up to you. And the more I clarified it, the more it showed it. Well, you're just trying to clarify, or you're just bucking with the information. You see what I mean? And then it got to where it's like, I think I hurt the person's feelings, right? So I'm putting a lot on you right now, but I don't get to talk to super pro like tarot readers or creators that often, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm really glad that this is a great question to ask. I think that because you know yourself, you know what kind of a reader you are. I think it's important that you let people know before you read their cards, this is how I am. Right. You know, I go deep. I will not censor myself. I'm going to tell you like I see it. And I think that giving full disclosure with whoever you're reading cards for in advance, that in itself is a boundary because they then give their consent, right?
Okay.
And so I think that that's important. I think also you mentioned something before about feeling people's pain. Sometimes I think it's important for readers I used to think I had to know everything that was going on with the person who was sitting across from me. I used to think that I needed to really feel them, know their story. And then at some point I realized, you know, it's enough. It's enough to just sit there and read the story of the cards.
Okay.
And let them do the work. Do you know what I'm saying? So again, that's something, I don't know. Maybe if it's not comfortable for you, or if it maybe take it back a notch.
Take it back a notch. Gotcha. Yeah. Well,
take it back like energetically too, so that you're not reaching out, you know, and feeling all of the stuff that they're feeling. Because your job is only to read the cards, is to tell them what you see. And I don't know, that was a valuable lesson when I learned it. And then I got less exhausted from reading the cards. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it makes total sense. It does. And you got a lot of books and decks out, right? So it's cool. One big thing that I'm attracted to when it comes to this stuff is the artwork and the beauty and the symbolism into it. So when a person, I don't think there's anything bigger than you can do other than two things. And this is like write your own book or create your own tarot deck, which you've done both. And your new tarot deck is the Dark Wood Tarot. That's the newest one, right, that you have out?
No, well, actually, the Dark Wood Tarot is a shadow deck that came out coincidentally, it came out in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, in June of 2020, which was interesting, just the timing of that. And it's been really successful. So my publisher just released a mini version of the Darkwood Tarot. So that hit the market.
So is it the Tarot of the Witch's Garden then? Is that the newest one?
Yes, the Tarot of the Witch's Garden, which just was published. It came out in May. That's my latest tarot deck. Yeah. and that's kind of a lighter cottage core. I have done 2 really dark decks, the Darkwood Tarot, which is a dark fairy tale forest, and the Tarot of the Haunted House, which is an ode to gothic horror. And so I thought, let me try and do something lighter, you know. But I'm immediately going straight back to the dark with my next deck.
No, I get that. Is there something in the Rider-Waite tarot that you feel like it's kind of lacking, that you felt like, well, if I do the Haunted House or the Darkwood Tarot, I'll get to express this energy that I'm getting from these cards, like a certain type of energy that I don't get from the Rider-Waite? Because I think the Rider-Waite is a beautiful deck. But they purposefully hid a lot of stuff in that deck too, if you read about it.
Yeah. But I retain, even though these decks are like wildly artful, like I was saying before, I retain a lot of symbolism from the Rider-Waite Smith. So they are the structure, the heart of them is very Rider-Waite Smith based. But no, when I create tarot decks, it's for different reasons. Like the Darkwood Tarot, to be honest with you, when I call that a shadow deck, I just being in this business for so long, being around tarot readers, you know, I know that a lot of times people pull out their cards and they just see what they want to see, and they want to just like, oh, I'm a spiritual person on a spiritual journey. I'm like, yeah, that's great. We all are. But like, if we're not learning something new, if we're not literally discovering something new about ourselves or our situation when we're sitting down to read tarot, then what's the point? You know, we move towards magical tools like tarot to poke around the shadows, right? That's our job as readers. So I wanted to create a shadow deck that will kind of call people out on their own bad behavior.
Nice. Okay.
Why do that? For what we were talking about before, so that we can get rid of the bull. Can I swear on this show?
Yeah.
So we can get rid of, you know, so we can be honest and take accountability and be in our high priestess self. Yeah. And the other thing is that as much as I love the Rider-Waite Smith and you love the Rider-Waite Smith, I find a lot of people, myself included, you just fall in love with a landscape, a universe of tarot that they go back to time and time again as they're learning. And so I love to create these immersive environments, haunted houses, dark fairy tale forests, magical gardens, so that tarot lovers and people who want to learn tarot can lose themselves in those environments, you know?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, because we do need to see our own bullshit. And I think that's part of the spiritual journey, is like tarot does that for us. There's this another thing too I was going to ask you about. You see, I don't notice, and I could be wrong, but through your collection of books and tarot decks and stuff, I don't notice that you have like an oracle deck, right? It's like you're sticking to the tarot so far. And am I wrong about that?
Oh, yeah.
Or you're just...
No, absolutely.
Because I think oracle decks are great, but like I feel that they're not as powerful as the tarot, because the tarot goes back so far, like egregorically, that you're going to get the real answers from the tarot. But I'm getting a question here too. So people are wanting to know this. But you guys got to remember too, she's also an author too. So she's an author and tarot creator and tarot reader. But when you do read the tarot, do you do like a pre-prayer ritual type? You don't have to tell us what you do, but do you do that before each reading, or do you just kind of go for it?
Yeah, I always have. Not before each reading individually. Do you know what I mean? But
sure.
like if I was at a party, I don't have a ritual before like every person that sits down in front, and I wouldn't necessarily advocate that for anybody out there unless that's comfortable for them. But yeah, certainly. And it, you know, tarot, any magical thing, the more attention and the more sacred that you make it, the more in alignment you'll become with your own intuition, you know? So yeah, so I always begin. And again, that's a boundary, that's a protective, like having a prayer or an intention before you begin. It protects you, but it also protects the people that you're reading for. It's kind of like, I would call it good spiritual hygiene, you know, and I think that's really, I think it's important. I mean, talking about like calling ourselves out on our own bullshit, you know, you have to, in magic, in tarot, and in life in general, you have to take responsibility for yourself. You know, you have to, you have to be responsible for your actions and for the space that you create. And when you're reading for another person, like I don't think it's a great idea to be cavalier. You owe it to the people who are coming to you for answers to,
Yeah, for sure. You've been doing this stuff since, publicly since like 2010, around then, 2010, 2011?
Yeah, so I had started reading, I guess, in the mid-2000s professionally, and then my first book, Tarot Diva, was released in 2011. And then I pretty much had a mass market title come to market almost every year since then, which is why I've published so many things. So, yeah.
That's so cool.
And it was funny because I didn't ever expect to even be a writer. I never thought I'd ever make a tarot deck. But, you know, when you're paying attention to the things that sparkle in front of you, it was just, it's kind of how it all unfolded.
Do you think that more people are reading tarot now than ever before? I mean, you're a child of the 70s and 80s, right? Kind of like I am. So tarot back then was
totally.
Tarot back then, if I touched a tarot deck when I was a kid, like I'd have been in big trouble, man. You know, like big
tarot
trouble.
was so hidden. It was such a hidden thing. It was so like in the shadows. And when I went pro as a tarot reader, I remember thinking, oh, I should find a school or something. I should not just, I need to be like trained. And thankfully the tarot school in New York City, and they're still in existence, happened to be like a couple blocks away from me. But even then, what was that, like maybe 2007? Magic and tarot was still a very kind of closeted thing. It was before social media. So people, all over the world couldn't, if you were like alone in a rural town and into magic and tarot, maybe good luck finding somebody else who was also into that, and even going into a bookstore to find a tarot deck was pretty challenging. And there certainly wasn't the selection then that there is today. And I can tell you from a sales standpoint, because I can see when my sales surge and when they're like during the pandemic, it was such people had time to really
massive, huh?
Spend time to explore their spiritual side. So sales exploded during the pandemic. TikTok accelerated, witch talk, tarot talk, all of that. And I feel like things have settled back into their pre-pandemic. That explosion has kind of evened off a little bit. But the great thing is that tarot is just kind of really out there in the world now in a way it never has been before. And the same is true of witchcraft and, so many things. So I think that's great. I think it's wonderful. Some tarot people who've been around a long time get mad at like people on, young people on TikTok spouting out spiritual stuff. But I mean, I think that it's great. I think, again, anything that offers people clarity.
Well, it's opening the doors to a collective, something bigger collectively, I think, right? Because we've been told, so many things based on religion and society, a history that had so many hidden things in it. Our entire religious structure left out the teachings of the four elements and the divine feminine altogether, even though it was hidden and embedded in all of it. Even in Revelations, it has, the four quadrants at the tops of learning, the four elements and the four corners of the Sphinx and all the stuff that is, by the way, it goes back to my first question when we opened the show up. Like, sometimes people ask, well, what books do I need to get? Or do I need my own ritual space? Or how do I become initiated? There's just so many questions. And at this point in my life, I feel like, I'm like, you know what? If you just started out with a tarot deck, I think that's all you need sometimes. Because it's
I
all
love
there.
the idea. I love this idea that if somebody was like alone, like in a room, like say they were like locked away in prison or in a tower or whatever, and like they didn't have anything but a tarot deck, by, a year in, they would know so much.
Yeah, right.
And the funny thing is, like, even though I write books, the first thing I tell, students, or the first thing I tell people is throw the books away, throw them away. Because the information is there, and the way that you intuit and how it feels, like, I think when we're talking about, ephemeral, we're talking about things that are very hard to define when we're talking about magic and spirituality,
Sure, yeah.
intuition, how to work with, energies, archetypal energies, invisible energies, ghostly energies, all that stuff. Our language fails us so miserably, which is why art and music and movies are so much better at expressing these things than looking something up in a dream dictionary where it just feels like, what? This doesn't match up. And it makes me sad. When people are so quick to look up the meaning of a card, I'm like, no, wait, just sit with it. Just like be like, find out what it means to you. That's the most important thing,
Sure, yeah. Like, I think I passed that up. Like, I went straight to the Kabbalah and started reading about it. I did. I went straight. I think I got Robert Wang's book. The first one I got was like the Kabbalistic Tarot, And
I love that book.
And he's like, oh, the King of Wands, and he's explaining the elements. There's primal elements, primordial. There's these different versions of the elements. So the King of Wands is fire in the world of Absoluth. And I'm like, what does this mean? What does that mean, right? Like, it was so...
I call it metaphysical algebra.
Yeah, like, it was so confusing at first. But I really feel like if I would have started out just intuitively and then slowly introduced like the elements, the Kabbalah and all that stuff into it, and just played with the tarot deck for maybe, I don't know, a year, maybe, like you said, I think it would have been a lot easier to understand,
Well, I think that when you study something from a purely analytical or scholar, so much of magic and tarot reading is experiential. Magic is experiential. You can read all you want about what it would be like to interface with an archetypal energy, but until that experience actually happens to you, it's like hearing about what it's like to have sex before you actually lose your virginity. Absolutely, like it's a totally different thing. So I think that when people go in and people are memorizing and learning and trying to and it's all very algebraic. I think that you're missing the forest for the trees, because I think that I don't think. And everybody learns in a different way. And all of that information, that way that you started, I think that the Kabbalistic lessons embedded in tarot it makes me sad most people don't spend the time to learn that.
To learn it,
to understand it. Yeah, they don't. And I understand why. It's confusing and if you're not maybe Jewish in origin. I even was like, oh my God, rolling my eyes when I started learning it.
Yeah, because it's a lot.
I was learning it.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and also it felt very much. I was like, well, I'm not Jewish. Like, am I hopping on the Kabbalah bandwagon? Because there's, because that, yeah, like it it kind of can feel odd. But the information that's there, it's so none of what you did was in vain, and you get the joy of kind of having your experience with tarot in reverse. It's not working against you to have all that wonderful information at your fingertips.
Well, it helped me to understand
slowing it down.
The archetypal energies, and that's what I was going to ask you about the artwork. Did you do the artwork yourself, or did you work with an artist when you did this?
No.
It doesn't matter how you do it, but a lot of people work with artists when they do these things too.
Yeah. So when I come up with an idea for a tarot deck, I map the whole entire thing out and create a proposal.
Gotcha.
And when my publisher agrees, but they're like, yes, and offers me the contract, then the publisher and I start to search for an artist. But what I've done is I've essentially described every single card almost like a scene from a movie. So then we look for the artist that can best kind of bring that vision to life, and then they go and I have it all written out for them. So, there's a witch in the woods and there's two wands on the left and the right side and da 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 da. So I describe everything. Yeah, but I've never actually I painted one or two cards.
I attempted it, and I was like, this is going to take forever, right? Because there's so, because I was like, there's so many of these, but look, it's fun to do like a path working, right? Like you could take a major arcana card, I don't know, say like the Tower or the Lovers or something, look at, and to me, it was fun to look at, okay, well, what path on the tree of life does that correspond to? What does that mean, right? And then go and find what all the people on the internet are saying about this card. And I was always jealous because be honest with you, I got a little snooty about it. I thought, well, I know more about the tarot than everybody because I know the Kabbalistic stuff. But the truth of the matter is there was a lot that I didn't know. First off, like I didn't have all the astrological correspondences memorized. Like I couldn't tell you intuitively what anything meant. And then when I would put cards together, I'd be like, well, I don't even know how to read this. So I got humbled really quick. You know what I mean? It can definitely humble you fast.
And the other thing that I think is important to remember is that the cards are bottomless in their meaning. Nobody's ever going to know everything there is to know about tarot. And to be honest with you, you're always in a different environment, in a different situation when you're reading the cards, and especially if you're reading for someone else, right? So nobody ever knows what's going to happen. That's kind of exciting. Like, I mean, God, I've been reading cards for over 2 decades now, and I still kind of hold my breath when I shuffle and get ready to turn a card. Like I'm on the edge of my seat. It's like, I swear, like reading tarot for yourself, it's like eating pizza. It's always the first right? time you're tasting it,
Yeah. What do you think the card that most people struggle with the most? Is it the Devil card or is it the Death card? People like you can tell people a million times, don't worry about these cards. They mean certain things. And then they're like, oh no, yeah, I get it. And then you'll do a reading, and when they pop out, you can see their faces. They're always like, and it's
they get really upset.
Yeah,
and that speaks to the visual. All right, so that speaks to one of the reasons that tarot is as effective as it is. It's a visual medium, right? And so you can't discount the symbols and the visuals, which don't need language, right? They move straight into your soul, and you recognize what you're looking at, And so nobody wants to get bad news. And so cards like the Three of Swords or the Tower or Death, people are sitting there with bated breath and terrified, like, is the worst case scenario going to show up, and they're reading. And so then when it's spooky, and so many people are like afraid of the entire suit of swords. So many readers are like freaked out by the entire suit of swords. And that's, fair. Like, people come, when I used to read at parties, I wouldn't know who was there. I would pull the Death and the Tower out only because so many people, you just don't know who's coming up to the table, and people have so many preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you explain to them that the Death is about transformation and the Tower is about things reorganizing and getting rid of what doesn't fit. They just want to see the happy stuff. And I understand that. I understand that too. But I think I would say that Death card is probably the scariest card for people. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it is. It still is. I'm going to be honest. It is because, still, even though I like change, right? Because change moves us forward. But as I get older, because I'm 41 now, right? And as I get older, time starts going so damn fast, as you get older too. I start to cherish certain things in my life. whether it's people, relationships, where I live, what I'm doing. And so when I see that death card, I'm like, oh, come on, man. I finally got here. You know what I mean? Like, what other transformation do I got to go through? Can we just like chill for a minute? But it's not the fear anymore of like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or I get that anxiety feeling, you know.
Right. No, I know. And death is not easy. Change is not easy. I like to look at it as like as kind of an initiatory death, though. The moment at which the occultist realizes the true nature of the universe, right? And you're giving up the ghost of what you thought the world was when you realize it's actually so much bigger. And I think especially in the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, there's a beautiful, with that sun rising between the two towers in the distance. And really that's about the occultist understanding the true nature of the world and then moving on the journey of return. Because up until the death card, right, everything has sort of been like, okay, you're meeting the cards and the personalities and starting to understand what the constructs of the material world. Once you start understanding that it's something that works both ways, that liminal space can be moved into. It's not just things manifesting in the world, but that you can retroactively work backwards and work your way back up the tree to great divinity on your own terms. I like that.
That's a very cool. I got to save that for a sound clip, actually. You know, that's pretty cool. That's really cool because and you know what? I honestly don't think that you would even understand all of that without the tarot, right? Like what you just said was beautiful, right? And there's a picture of the tree where it has like the lightning flash of manifestation, right? And I always tell people this. I'm like, okay, well, it shows the lightning flash of manifestation, which is like how things manifest into the world. And you could put the tarot cards up on these paths and Sephira and show it. And then it has it's the picture that also has the winding snake that goes up the tree, which represents like that kundalini or that feminine spiritual force of transcendence, or is that what you just called it? As you rise up the tree, right?
The journey of return. Yeah.
And it's like this winding snake it shows in this picture. And I almost teared up when I saw this one day because I didn't learn this in the Kabbalah or any of this stuff. I just looked at the card, like you said, and I saw the Lover's card, right? And it shows the angel above the male and the female. And the feminine has like this tree behind her with the snake, right? The winding snake. And the feminine is looking at the angel. And then the masculine card has the tree that's burnt, right? Like lightning hit it. It's burnt with fire. But the masculine's not looking at the angel. The masculine is looking at the feminine, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'm like, oh my God. Like in that moment, no one told me anything, but that's when I realized how beautiful the whole tarot thing was. I was like, oh my God, I get it. Right. So, and when we think we get it, we still probably are only getting one aspect of something bigger, but it started to awaken me. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not reading for anybody. I'm just studying these cards, and this is doing this to me, you know?
It's so exciting when things like that happen, when it starts to come alive for you, when you start to understand a glimmer of what you're looking at, and that none of it's accidental. You know, everything's there on purpose, and it's all speaking to a much greater thing. And I love what you just described in the Lover's card, because it's essentially an energetic triangle, right?
Yeah.
And it's the ultimate creativity, which of course is love and sex, erotic love, and transcendence. You know, I always laugh, like people who wouldn't consider themselves very magical, you know, like mind-blowing consensual sex is one of the most metaphysical things that everybody does. You know, you literally transcend your body.
Right, and people don't watch The Fifth Element, like you don't get what's going on in that movie. That's art. That's the whole thing, kind of like, if you really get into the characters, you know, you got Ruby Ross, which is the rose, and you got Cornelius, which is the preacher guy or whatever that's holding the secrets. And then they got to put the four elements together. And it's a whole like masculine and feminine play in that story, right? Because she's telling Corbin Dallas, which means, Black Raven or Black Star, by the way, which is a kind of like the dark side of the masculine. She's telling him, like, why do you, he's like, no, you got to stay here with me, whatever, you got to stay. And she's like, why? Why should I? Well, I see what you do with life. I'm the protector of life, which is like this Empress card. Right? The great being that comes down the middle pillar, like this Empress that's a life-giving, life protector, motherly type card, right? And it takes the masculine to surrender, which is something the feminine does easier, to finally say, because I love you. And then he kisses her, and then the light goes through and stops the death thing from coming down, Yeah,
yes. And what I think is beautiful about the Emperor and the Empress and the interplay, the flirtation that happens between them, right? And she's the ultimate feminine. He's the ultimate masculine. Yeah. She's the Empress's complete expansion, and the Emperor is contraction, is structure, right? I always say he's the canvas that stops the painting from going on forever. He's the structure of the book. The Empress by herself would never stop moving. And so it is their interplay. It is their interplay and flirtation that causes the actual world that we live in, the material world, to come to be. But to me, it's very much a relationship that's never actually consummated, because it is their flirtation. It is the back and forth between the masculine and the feminine that creates the world as we know it. And if they were to ever consummate that love, then the world would cease to exist.
Do you think the tarot shows that inside of us individually too?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Because, we don't want to be ourselves. And this is why the tarot is so hardcore on people, because I think we're all super individuals. And the whole time you're reading for yourself or you're getting a reading from somebody, they're like, yeah, it's if you're not being authentic, it's going to tell you every single time, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, no, and I think that life tells you when you're not being authentic, because when you're not coming from that true space of who you are, things don't necessarily, you're not satisfied, or things aren't falling into place. Do you know what I mean? That's in that.
That's crazy that you understand that. Most people don't come on the show and just say that, right? And I think it's cool that, to me, it shows your proficiency in what you're doing, that you understand that we could possibly be living inside of one gigantic cosmic orgasm, so to speak. That's what's creating all of life.
Totally.
Or this interplay.
100%. 100%. And I mean, even on a very practical level, you want to get something done, pretend you're in love with it, put all your central energy behind it. Right. But I think that's energy. And
That's kind of what you do with your tarot decks, right? You're like, all right, so I'm going to put these symbols in them, which is the logical understanding of. That's, to me, the symbols are kind of like the masculine side. And then the color and the artwork and all this other stuff is like the feminine side. And you put them together, and it just activates stuff inside of us,
Yeah, for sure. I've never thought of it that way. But 100%. It's funny, as a writer, I always think of the Empress energy as my ideas, and I'm like, oh my God, I know. And then the thing I always struggle with is the Emperor part, which is, okay, it's time to edit. You know what I mean? It's time to put this into a form that makes sense. Let's go to the second draft and the third draft, and let's get this down and make it a thing. So I think that tarot is really helpful in describing those aspects of ourselves that we're either really proficient in or that we struggle with, but that we have to have, and that's very much part and parcel of the Devil card too, which the Devil card is an amazing card, and if you look in history, all the Devil characters and movies and and books, it's always some sexy actor. The devil wants you to have everything, like sex, money, all of your dreams coming true, like all of it. It's all just take it, which is very Empress in a way. But you have to know your limits, and that's you have to know your own personal limits. And if you don't, then it's kind of over, and the devil will have their way with you, and you'll get in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, I think it showed the Rider-Waite showed that very well. Like, it showed the opposites of the Lovers card, right? I wouldn't say the opposite, but in between the masculine and the feminine, the Lovers card was a fiery red mountain of manifestation, right? And then the devil just has this winged, beast. Like a beast that's controlling the air, and the air element controls what? Our thoughts, right? So to me, I'm like, oh, this thing's got you in your head, number one, and then it's got you chained, and then it shows on both sides again, except these trees aren't really behind them or manifesting. The energy is burning up the individuals, the male and the female personas in the card. So they're getting burned up by their own desires, and they're trapped in their head too. And it's like, I got you, by your fears and your desires.
It's such a beautiful inversion of the Lovers card. And if you think about it too, I always loved it with the Lovers card too. I'm always like, the Lovers card shows you what is possible, but not what is sustainable. Because true Lovers card energy is like the first 3 months or 6 months of a new relationship, a new romantic relationship, where like, the world is on fire and everything is just perfect and brilliant and beautiful and just exciting. And then it quickly, then it gets tough, and then it becomes kind of more of a devil card,
Well, it can
start becoming.
I think people, but it can. But I think people that understand, this is the cool part about this. I think if you understand this energy as a whole. Like, if you understood the esoteric meanings behind the tarot decks, like the cards, you'd probably be able to make your relationships last a lot longer, honestly. Because as the masculine, you would be like, okay, well, it's my job to initiate things. It's not her job. It's my job. Right? She builds the garden, I initiate the force, right? Like, so what are you sitting around waiting on, dude? Like, of course, that there's all kinds of stuff that's in there. I could go down a whole other road with that, but the tarot shows you that too.
Yeah, and then you can name it for yourself, and that's something that tarot people do all of the time, because tarot becomes its own language. Like, oh, that was very like devil card of me, or if like you're too attached to something, you're like, okay, that's that like devil card piece where I like feel like I'm really attached to this outcome. Or this person or this thing, I better ease up. Like exactly what you're saying. Like, tarot gives you, it's a wonderful way for you to examine yourself, to understand yourself, and to give language or energy to those pieces inside of you. You can observe it when it's happening, and then make, adjustments therein, so that you can kind of hopefully stay in a space of peace or pleasure.
You try to. You try to stay in balance the whole time. That's the key, right? But no, I don't want to take up too much of your time, because we had to go kind of straight through. So this will get chopped up into the breaks and stuff. But I do want to know, like, if I had some questions written here. I didn't ask any of them because I get lost in my conversations. So, what do you think was the most spiritual? How do I ask this question? Like, when you were creating your tarot decks, which one do you think was the one where you were connected, where you were dialed in to your higher self or spirit the most? The kind of like, I'm so inspired, I'm dialed in, I'm going to do this tarot deck.
So I wrote a book called the Llewellyn's Complete Book of the Rider-Waite Smith Tarot. And when I was writing that book, I knew that my job was not to write what I thought about tarot, but to examine what Arthur Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith were up to when they made the deck. So I deconstructed the entire pictorial key of the tarot. And I had never taken the time to do that as a tarotist, like literally pull apart every word that he wrote because it's very dense and thick. That was that was an unbelievable experience writing that book. And I'm really fortunate because when I write books or make decks, I'm learning as I go along, right? But as far as the decks, it's funny. And this is something again that was a great teaching moment for me. There was a period of time where I was collecting these soft cover Gothic novels of like a woman running away from, like in the 60s and 70s, those books that came out where a woman in a dress is running away from a castle or a mansion. And I was just beguiled by the art. I didn't read the books because they weren't written very well, but I loved the art. And I'm like, I don't know why I keep collecting these. There was like, I guess, a thrift store nearby that had lots of them. And I was just like, I don't know, like, I need these. And then when it came time, when my editor was like, Sasha, we really want you to make a deck. And I was like, what would my theme be? I was like, oh my God, it's these books. It's the haunted house. It's the perfect metaphor. It's the perfect metaphor because the heroine gets summoned to the haunted house and she has to face all of her fears. And by the end of the book or the movie, I always say, bitch owns the house. And so because it was my first time creating a tarot deck, I don't know, I felt dialed in, and they're all like that. But Darkwood Tarot too.
That's your first album, right? That's like the first album, though. That's when you're really, I think that the first album is always when you're most. Not saying you're not artistic, you're just artistic in other ways, but your first album, I always believe, is kind of like the most inspired one, Yeah,
because you're running out into new territory, and you're just kind of like, what's here? You don't know because you haven't done it before. But the Darkwood Tarot on a very deep level, because it was talking about darkness. It was talking about the underbelly. And I put in a really beautiful story into the deck so new people to tarot could follow along the story and maybe understand the cards a little bit better. I felt really dialed in with Darkwood Tarot as well.
That's so cool.
Thank you for asking that question. And a lot of times, and I don't know if you've ever, a lot of times the things that I write, sometimes they'll come true. It's like crazy.
That's a whole chaos magic theory. So you had probably drew pictures in that deck, and they actually happened, I bet, a few of them, huh? Some of them in a certain sense. Just guessing here.
And I would write things, or I would see things, I don't know. I've seen things that have been revealed to me, and then I would later travel to those places. Yeah. And
cool.
Again, and that comes too from learning to embody the cards as well. I don't know. It's a lot. It's so exciting.
No, that's really cool. That's cool. And I think it reminds me of when you were talking about that, I was thinking, I had something in my head. I was like, what does that remind me of? That movie. There's a movie about we used to talk about it on the show all the time, but it's when this woman goes and you have to watch this if you're kind of into the dark stuff, right? So have you seen, it's a movie where a woman is doing the Abramelin and the Mage ritual. It's on Netflix, or it used to be on Netflix. And she goes to this house for 6 months, and she takes an occultist with her, and they go over the book of the ritual and stuff, and she's trying to face her holy guardian angel so that she can learn to forgive. That's what she wants. Actually, she wants vengeance, but she learns that she wants to learn to forgive. But that was one of the freakiest movies I ever saw. Like this, as this girl goes deeper and deeper into the ritual, more things are revealed to her from the astral realm until she becomes pretty much trapped by these demons, And it's, I'll think of it in a minute, and then I'll. Have you seen any movies like that? Because I can't think of the name of it. I've seen it 100 times.
Terrifying.
It is a little terrifying. So Aleister Crowley talked about that ritual, that Abramelin the Mage ritual, that it's in this big ritual that takes like months, 18 months or something, that you do all this stuff so that you can actually come in contact with your holy guardian angel, right? And then have conversation and knowledge, and then you learn your holy guardian angel's name and all this stuff. Here's the cool thing that, like what we were talking about, Aleister Crowley never accomplished that in full. But what he did accomplish in full was the new Aeon when he went into the temple. And I think the reason why he did that, and the reason why he started Thelema as like this big religion or whatever, is because he took his wife Rose with him. And he channeled the energy through the feminine, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew about that. Anyways, I got on a rant there, but no, tell us what you got coming up next. What some events that you got coming up?
What do I have coming up? Yeah, I've got a pretty packed October. So I'll be presenting at the World Association of Divination, the Wave Festival. That's a virtual event that's happening the weekend of October 13th. There's actually dozens of tarot pros, people like Mary Greer, myself, Etney Dawn, I mean, everybody. And we're all doing like an hour class, like each of us. So it's just like nonstop tarot stuff through the weekends. So I'm doing that. I'll be at Barnes & Noble in Bayshore, Long Island for Halloween Mayhem with a bunch of horror authors doing readings and signings on October 27th. I host 2 live events in Brooklyn, Ghost Stories by the Fire and Sasha Graham's Psychic and Paranormal event. That will be this month out in Brooklyn on the 24th and 25th of October. I'll be on Jim Harold's podcast next week. So anybody who's interested in an event or what's going on, they can just go to my website, sashagraham.com, and click on events, or even look on my social media. I always put the stuff up on my Instagram, Tarot Diva.
And all your books and all the decks and everything are there. You can see them, purchase them. And the movie came back to me, too. It's called If You Get Time and You're Really Into the Dark Stuff. And what that deck kind of reminded me of was a movie called A Dark Song. That's what it's called. A Dark Song. Ooh, yeah. I've never heard of it. That sounds so scary. It is kind of freaky, man, because it's the one movie that represents an entire kind of realistic view of a very long ceremonially magic grimoire, so to speak, you know. It would be very interesting to find out what happened on that set. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on, because that must have been an intense situation. I actually thought about that too. I was like, where did they, because in the ritual itself, if you read the book, Abramelin, that you're supposed to find a secluded place, right? You can use your own house, but you can't have any distractions or whatever. So it's better to go find a house. So that's what they did. She went out and bought in the movie. She went out and bought this house so that she could do this whole ritual in, right? And then, covered the whole grounds with salt and everything. It's a freaky movie. We used to talk about it on the show all the time, but A Dark Song, you should definitely check that out. I thought about that the moment I looked at the cover of your the horror tarot deck, the Gothic horror tarot of the haunted house with the woman running. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought about that. So you should host a watch party of that movie, you and your listeners. Yeah, we did that once, I think, but I've done that. But I think I'll do it again. Actually, that's a good idea because it's been a long time since I've done that. Yeah. Yeah. But thanks for coming on the broadcast. It was really cool to have. I mean, it's cool to have people on here that understand kind of what I'm into. You know, there's a big difference when I talk to people and I'm like, that I don't understand what they're doing. That's a whole different type of show. This is a kind of show where it's like, oh yeah, a tarot person. I can dig this. So thank you for coming on. Oh, well, thank you so much. Thanks for all of your amazing questions and having me on. It was really fun. It was really good. Yeah. So make sure you guys give her a follow at sashagraham.com. Follow her on social media, and then we'll be back next week, guys. Thanks again.